So this is the updated version of the introduction to the 5-part series on decoding moons, 2 moons, 4 moons, blood moons, tetrads, planetary alignments, you name it, which I started and developed, well, actually the end of last year, where it really took off, and then I started getting even deeper and deeper into it the first couple months of this year. And I started posting this about the end of March. Here's a screenshot of my YouTube channel showing you the dates when I first started posting these teaching videos. In fact, the first round was about the end of February. But since then, there's been updates and there's been more dreams. And from the steep learning curve I've been on, I actually had to go back and change the rendering of some of my decoding or my attempted decodings, because at first it looked like everything was pointing to that super blood moon on May 15th into the 16th of 2022. And almost all the dreams, given the understanding and the information I had to work with, were pointing to that time, that Passover, that 7 days of unleavened bread. Well, those days came and went, and I had to go back and dig deeper into some of these dreams and come to find out, well, some of these dreams probably had a double application. In other words, there was just enough information there to get the focus on the month of May, because it turns out the month of May was God's true Rosh Hashanah, not the secular Rosh Hashanah that the Hebrew culture and the Hebrew religious community gives us, which is nowhere mentioned in Scripture. Only God's Rosh Hashanah is mentioned in Scripture. That's Exodus 12:2. The Hebrew is, Moses, this is your Rosh Kodesh, your Kodesh Hashanah. And that's where we get the phrase or term Rosh Hashanah. So in Exodus chapter 12, God said, Moses, this is your Rosh Hashanah. And on the 10th day, you will choose a lamb. You will watch it for 4 days to make sure it is without blemish. On the 14th day, you crucify that little thing, and you take its blood and you put it on your doorpost. Then you will roast it, you will eat it, and then you will beat feet out of Egypt. All that meaning that Rosh Hashanah is the month of Exodus. It's the month of Passover. God only defines the time of a festival of trumpets and tabernacles as the 7th month. That's the only language he uses. That's the only definition he gives for those feasts, the 7th month. He never calls it the first month of the year or the head of the year. And what was made clear to me by walking down this path and dealing with all these rabbit holes is that God is trying to restore his covenant dates, his appointed times, and his convocations based on his Rosh Hashanah, based on his Hebrew calendar, the one that is lining up with this 4 blood moon tetrad we're currently in, a tetrad that is the middle tetrad of 3 tetrads. And God tells us in Genesis and Acts chapter 2 that these moons, these signs and wonders in the heaven, are specific for his seasons, for his festivals, and for special prophetic events. And Jesus said he came to fulfill and confirm those covenants, to confirm God's law. And that's exactly what he did. And in this 5-part series, you will see all kinds of dreams that dreamers have dreamed, pointing to these signs and wonders and to these events. And spoiler alert, the moon phases, the sun phases, such as lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, special stars and asteroids, well, they all came to pass. And that's easily discerned by plugging their storylines into Stellarium and finding Stellarium's representation of those storylines. And every one of these storylines has been displayed in a Stellarium timeline. That should tell us something. So what I'm doing now is I'm updating all those 5 teaching videos to include the new and improved decodings, keeping in mind this double application thing. Because some of the narratives they gave on some of these dreams, well, like I said, the first rendering had us focused on Rosh Hashanah and the proper Passover and 7 days of unleavened bread. And those dates all matched God's criteria for determining these times of the year, like maybe having ripe and totally harvested and processed barley grain that then can actually be used when the farmers go to Passover to be used in the wave offering that first fruit Omar was meant for, as opposed to green barley that you can't make into anything, and it's not harvested, rather it's clipped by a rabbi or a Sanhedrin or some religious figure, usually a month before it's ripe, showing us that the Hebrew religious community has messed this thing up terribly. And come to find out that they were basically using Babylonian methodologies that they practiced during their Babylonian captivity and brought back with them after their Babylonian captivity. I mean, they even named all their months after those Babylonian gods. So I'm going back now and correcting and updating those 5 videos, dialing in that double prophecy application where it's required, and I'll show you where I made the mistake in the first place, even though it's not really a mistake. That's all I had to work with at the time. But now, with the update and with additional dreams, it appears to me that what God is trying to do in the restoration of his appointed times, covenant dates, and convocations is that he's going to walk us through every one of them for this year 2022. So if it seems like I'm kind of jumping around in these videos, that's because I am splicing in the updates, making the corrections, and I don't have the weeks and months it takes to make even one of those videos. And I'm going to try to get this done as quickly as possible in response to the upcoming fall feasts, starting with trumpets and tabernacles. And just keep in mind, this is a steep learning curve. And many of you, if not most of you, are going to be extremely challenged. But I promise you, if you go through this, you are going to learn a lot. It might require some sacred cows being sacrificed on the altar of tradition, but that is most often the price we have to pay to get deeper into God's truth. So just pull your cursor up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and that small white sphere with an eye in the middle of it, that's called an eye card, that will drop down. Click on that, and that will drop down a menu of many of my videos, starting with part 1 of decoding these moons and tetrads and planetary alignments, etc., etc. And I think you'll quickly find out that this stuff makes sense, especially when we apply to this what I call God's science, and that is God's science. We're applying this virtual planetary computer software that will show us exactly what's going to transpire in the heavens. It's not make-believe, it's science and the best representation of what it's actually going to look like. And it hasn't failed me yet. It has explained what some of these crazy items people have had in their dreams actually mean. So go ahead and pull your cursor up there, click on that icon, and then click on part 1. And then just sit back and enjoy the ride. Much of the heavy lifting has been done for you, but you're going to have to think a little bit. And in doing so, I think you're going to be terribly blessed. So here we go.